You know what $100 million sounds like when it's about to collapse? It's the silence between heartbeats. That moment when you realize the empire you built is about to become someone else's bonfire. My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 48 years old. I have arthritis in both hands from crimping 10,000 Ethernet cables, and until 3 months ago, I was the only person keeping a major hospital network from turning into a digital graveyard. But before I tell you how I dismantled a tech dynasty with nothing but documentation and patience, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this with anyone who's ever been pushed aside by someone half their age with twice their confidence and zero actual skill. We need the numbers. The algorithm feeds on engagement, and I'm about to feed it a feast. Done? Good. Let's talk about how I became the ghost in the machine. This place, let's call it Medinet Solutions, wasn't always the backbone of regional healthcare. 12 years ago, it was a struggling IT contractor with 3 employees and a dream. That was before I showed up. Back then, I was just Vicky, the network engineer who could make dead switches talk and failing servers beg for mercy. The owner was a guy named Richard Patterson. Picture a used car salesman who watched one too many TED Talks about disruption. Big smile, bigger promises, and absolutely zero technical knowledge. But he had capital, connections, and the kind of charm that gets you into boardrooms. I was the one who kept us in those boardrooms. When the regional hospital system had a ransomware attack that locked up patient records for 3 days, I was the one who rebuilt their network from backup tapes and prayer. I spent 72 hours straight in their basement server room, living on Red Bull and adrenaline, manually restoring databases while nurses ran paper charts upstairs. When we came back online, Richard got the handshake and the contract. I got a pizza party. That contract was the foundation. After that, we got the county medical examiner's office. Then the 3 urgent care chains. Then the behavioral health network that needed HIPAA compliance, so tight you could bounce a nickel off it. I built every single system. I knew every subnet, every VLAN, every backup rotation. I was the architect, the builder, and the janitor. Richard was the guy who showed up to ribbon cuttings. For 12 years, this worked. I didn't mind being in the background. I liked the technical work. I liked solving problems that made other engineers cry. I liked being the person they called at 3 a.m. when everything was on fire. But here's what I didn't know. Richard was getting ready to retire. And his son was coming home. Let me tell you about Trevor Patterson. Trevor spent 6 years getting a 4-year degree in business administration from a school that's primarily famous for its football team. He graduated with a 3.1 GPA and an ego that could fill a stadium. He'd been working at a tech startup in California that burned through $40 million in venture capital before imploding. According to his LinkedIn, he was a growth hacking evangelist and blockchain thought leader. According to reality, he was a 28-year-old with a man bun who thought legacy systems were just old computers you could turn off. The announcement came on a Tuesday. Richard called an all-hands meeting at 10 a.m. Never a good sign. We all crowded into the conference room. Me, my team of 5 engineers, the 2 sales guys, and Janet from accounting who also handled HR and ordered the office supplies. Richard stood at the head of the table, wearing his country club polo, and that smile that made my stomach hurt. He had his arm around Trevor, who was wearing a hoodie that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Team, Richard boomed, today is a momentous day. As you know, I've been thinking about succession planning. Richard never thought about anything more than 18 holes ahead, but okay. Trevor here has really proven himself in the Silicon Valley ecosystem, and he's ready to bring that innovative energy to Medinet. Effective immediately, he'll be taking over as Chief Technology Officer. The room went silent. My lead engineer, Marcus, looked at me with panic in his eyes. CTO? I said slowly, keeping my voice level. The position that oversees all technical operations and architecture? Richard's smile flickered for half a second. Well, yes. Trevor has the vision to take us to the next level. Cloud migration, AI integration, optimization. Right, Trevor? Trevor nodded, scrolling on his phone. Totally. The tech stack here is pretty legacy. We need to modernize the paradigm. Move fast and break things, you know? Move fast and break things. That's Facebook's old motto. Great advice when you're running a social network for college kids. Absolutely disastrous when you're managing life safety systems for hospitals. But what about current operations? I asked. Trevor finally looked up from his phone. His eyes had that vacant quality of someone who'd never actually fixed anything in his life. You'll still be here, Vicky, he said. My name is Victoria, I corrected. He blinked.
Right.
Victoria. You'll transition to a senior engineer role. Handle the day-to-day stuff while I focus on strategy. Senior engineer. A demotion wrapped in corporate speak. After 12 years of building this company from nothing, I was being pushed down the ladder to make room for someone who probably couldn't configure a home router. And what about the hospital contracts? I pressed. Those agreements specifically name me as the senior technical authority. Client relationships are key, Richard said quickly. Don't worry, we'll transition smoothly. Trevor will shadow you for a few weeks, learn the ropes. Then you can focus on the hands-on work you love. The hands-on work I love. Translation, we're taking away your authority but keeping you around to actually do the job while Trevor gets the title and the salary. I looked around the room. My team looked devastated. Janet looked uncomfortable. The sales guys looked relieved because they didn't understand what any of this meant. Fantastic. Okay, I said. Richard clapped. If that's the direction we're going, why don't you and Victoria grab lunch? Start the knowledge transfer? Trevor checked his Apple Watch. Actually, I have a call with a VC friend about our pivot strategy. Can you just email me a summary? Keep it high level. I don't need to know how the sausage is made. Just the key points. I smiled. The kind of smile you give a spider before you trap it under a glass. Sure, Trevor. I'll get you the key points. The meeting ended. Everyone scattered. I went back to my desk in the Network Operations Center. 3 monitors displaying real-time status of every system we managed. Green lights everywhere. Stable. Reliable.
Mine.
I sat down and opened a fresh document. I titled it Knowledge Transfer Summary for Trevor Patterson. Then I stared at the blank page for a long time. I could feel something cold and hard forming in my chest. Not anger. Anger is hot and reactive. This was colder. This was calculation. I closed the document without typing a word. Instead, I opened my email and started searching. I searched for every contract, every SLA, every statement of work we'd ever signed. I downloaded them all to an encrypted drive. Then I started reading. Really reading. Not just the technical specs, but the legal language, the liability clauses, the personnel requirements, the breach conditions. And that's when I found it. The thread I could pull that would unravel everything. Every single contract we had, from the hospital system to the medical examiner to the urgent care chains, had the same clause buried in the fine print. Section 8, subsection C, qualified personnel requirement. The client requires that all systems be maintained by personnel holding current certifications in healthcare, IT security, HIPAA compliance, and disaster recovery, with a minimum of 7 years' experience in medical environments. The lead engineer must be specifically named and approved by the client, and any change in this position requires 60 days' notice and client consent. I was that named engineer. On every contract. My name was on every statement of work, every compliance audit, every disaster recovery plan. Victoria Hayes, Senior Network Architect, certifications listed. I wasn't just an employee. I was a contractual requirement. Richard had built his entire business on the foundation of my credentials, and he didn't even realize it. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling tiles. I could walk away right now. I could quit, file for unemployment, let them figure it out. But that wouldn't be satisfying. That would be letting Richard and his startup bro son crash the company while I watched from the sidelines.
No.
I wanted something better. I wanted them to understand exactly what they'd lost. I wanted them to beg me to come back. And then I wanted to say no. I picked up my phone and called my friend Elena, who ran a medical IT consulting firm 2 states over. Elena, I said when she answered. How would you like to poach about $15 million in annual contracts? There was a pause. Then I heard her sit up. I'm listening. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the perfect employee. I smiled. I nodded. I answered Trevor's idiotic questions with patience. He asked things like, why can't we just move everything to AWS and call it a day? And do we really need backups? Isn't that what the cloud is for? I explained, carefully and thoroughly, why you can't just lift and shift medical records to public cloud without violating HIPAA. Why backups are required by law. Why our disaster recovery site couldn't be in the same geographic region as our primary site. He listened to approximately none of it. Instead, he hired a consultant, some guy he knew from California who specialized in digital transformation. The consultant showed up wearing designer sneakers and started talking about Kubernetes and microservices and agile methodologies. He had never worked in healthcare. He did not know what HIPAA was. When I tried to explain that we couldn't just containerize patient databases and call it modern, he literally said, that sounds like legacy thinking. Legacy thinking. The phrase people use when they don't know enough to understand why something was built the way it was. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Every bad decision. Every ignored warning. Every time Trevor overruled my recommendations. I kept copies of every email, every chat message, every meeting note. I was building a paper trail that would make the Library of Congress jealous. Then came the incident with the backup generator. We maintained a small data center in our office building. Nothing massive, just a few racks of servers that handled our monitoring systems and served as a backup for our cloud infrastructure. It had redundant power, redundant cooling, and a diesel generator that tested automatically every Saturday morning. Trevor decided the generator tests were too loud. They disturbed his podcasting schedule. He was trying to start a tech podcast called Disruption Station. It had 12 subscribers. 3 of them were bots. So Trevor, in his infinite wisdom, disabled the automatic generator tests. Just turn them off in the control software. I found out about this on Monday morning when I saw the alert log. I immediately went to his office. Trevor, I said, you disabled the generator tests. Yeah, he said, not looking up from his laptop. They're annoying, and we don't really need them. We test them every week. If we need the generator, we'll just turn it on. I took a deep breath. Trevor, generators don't work like light switches. The diesel can separate. The batteries can discharge. If we don't test them regularly and we have a power outage, we might not have backup power when we need it.
It'll be fine, he said.
I looked at a YouTube video. Modern generators are super reliable. You looked at a YouTube video, I repeated. For like an hour, he said proudly. I'm pretty much an expert now. I went back to my desk. I opened my documentation folder. I added a new entry. Date, time, action, my recommendation, Trevor's decision. Then I sent an email to Richard and Trevor, copying Janet for HR purposes. Per our discussion this morning, I am formally documenting my recommendation that we continue weekly generator testing as required by our disaster recovery plan and standard industry practice. I understand that management has decided to disable these tests. Please confirm this decision in writing for our records. Trevor responded immediately. Confirmed. We're optimizing our operational efficiency. The next day, I emailed our 3 largest clients. Just a friendly compliance update, I wrote. As part of our quarterly review process, I wanted to inform you of some infrastructure changes being implemented by our new CTO. I've attached the updated procedures for your review. Please let me know if you have any questions about how these changes might affect your disaster recovery obligations. I didn't say the changes were bad. I didn't say anything alarming. I just made sure they knew changes were happening. And I made sure those changes went to the client risk management departments. The people whose job is to worry about disaster scenarios. By Friday, I had 3 conference calls scheduled, all with very concerned risk managers. By Monday, I had formal requests for documentation of our updated disaster recovery plans. By Tuesday, Trevor was panicking because he didn't know how to write a disaster recovery plan. He came to my desk, sweating through his hoodie. Victoria, I need your help, he said. The hospital wants updated DR documentation, and I don't know where to start. I looked at him. I'm a senior engineer now, Trevor. Don't you handle strategy and documentation?
But you know the systems, he said.
I do, I agreed. And I've offered to review any documentation you create. I'm happy to provide technical feedback.
I can't create it, he said. I don't know how.
Then perhaps you should learn, I suggested. That's part of being CTO. His face went red. You know what? Forget it. I'll figure it out. He stormed off. 3 hours later, he sent the hospital a 2-page document that was clearly copied from a website and still had the original company's name in the header. The hospital called me directly. Victoria, the risk manager said, "What the hell is this? I'm looking at a disaster recovery plan that mentions servers we don't have and references a company called TechBro Solutions." I sighed audibly. "I'm so sorry, Margaret. There's been a change in leadership structure here, and I'm not authorized to create documentation anymore. But I'm concerned about the accuracy of what's being submitted." "Are you telling me you're not in charge of technical operations anymore?"
she asked.
I could hear the alarm in her voice. "Not as of 2 weeks ago," I said. "The owner's son has taken over as CTO. I'm now a senior engineer focused on hands-on implementation." Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "The contract specifies you as the lead engineer." "Yes," I said. "It does." "We're going to need to discuss this," she said. "I'll be calling Richard directly." I hung up and smiled. The thread was pulling. By the end of that week, I had similar calls from 2 other major clients. All of them were suddenly very concerned about the change in personnel. All of them were asking whether their contracts were still valid. All of them were requesting meetings with Richard. Richard called me into his office on Friday afternoon. He looked stressed. His country club tan had faded into a grayish pallor. "Victoria," he said, skipping the usual small talk. "The clients are nervous. I need you to take some calls. Reassure them everything's fine." "I'm a senior engineer, Richard," I said. "Shouldn't Trevor be handling client relations?" "Trevor is still getting up to speed," Richard said. "You have the relationships. Just tell them everything's stable." "I can tell them the systems are stable," I said carefully. "Because they are. I've made sure of that. But I can't speak to strategic direction or management decisions. That's above my pay grade now." Richard rubbed his temples. "You're being difficult." "I'm being accurate," I corrected. "You demoted me, remember? You told me to focus on hands-on work." "I'm focusing on hands-on work." "Fine," Richard snapped. "I'll give you a raise. 10%. Just keep the clients happy until Trevor's settled in." I looked at him. This man who'd built a fortune on my back. This man who'd cut my legs out from under me to give his incompetent son a toy to play with. 10% isn't enough, Richard. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want my title back," I said. "I want CTO with full technical authority. I want Trevor in a different role that doesn't involve touching anything that keeps patients alive." "That's not going to happen," Richard said. "Trevor needs this opportunity." "Then I need to think about my options," I said. I stood up. Richard's eyes widened. "Victoria, don't do anything rash." "I'm not rash, Richard. I'm methodical. I've spent 12 years being methodical. That's why everything works." I walked out. That weekend, I met with Elena. We had lunch at a quiet restaurant 2 towns over. She had contracts printed out, ready to sign. "I've already spoken to the hospital," she said. "Also the urgent care chain and the medical examiner's office. They're all ready to migrate to my firm if we can guarantee continuity of service."
"Can you?" I said.
"I know every system inside and out. I can transition them with 0 downtime." "What about Richard? What about him?" Elena asked. "He'll sue." "Maybe," I said. "But first he'd have to keep the clients. And to keep the clients, he needs me. He can't sue me and keep me at the same time." Elena grinned. "You're cold, Victoria." "I'm practical," I corrected. "And I'm tired of building other people's empires. This time I'm building my own." We signed the contracts. Elena would provide the business infrastructure, the legal entity, the client relations. I would be the technical director with 40% ownership. We'd slowly transition the clients over the next 90 days, following all the proper legal procedures. By the end of the quarter, Medinet Solutions would be an empty shell, and Elena's firm would be the new regional leader in healthcare IT. But first, I had to let Trevor destroy things just enough to make the transition inevitable. Monday morning, I came to work and immediately noticed something wrong. The network was slow. Not crashed, just sluggish. I checked the monitoring systems. Our internet bandwidth was maxed out. I traced the traffic. Someone had spun up a cryptocurrency mining operation on our backup servers. The servers that were supposed to be ready to take over if the primary systems failed. I pulled the logs. The mining software had been installed 3 days ago using Trevor's admin account. I printed the logs. I emailed them to Richard and Trevor with a subject line urgent. Security incident. Then I went back to my desk and waited. Trevor burst into the operations center an hour later. It wasn't me, he said immediately. Someone must have hacked my account. Did you give your password to anyone?
I asked. No, he said.
Then I remembered. The consultant. The digital transformation guy. I might have let him use my laptop to check something. You let an outside consultant use your admin account, I said flatly. He said he needed to assess our infrastructure, Trevor said defensively. He's a professional. He's a contractor with no background check who installed cryptocurrency mining software on our medical backup servers, I said. If we'd had a failover event, patient systems would have been running on compromised hardware. Trevor went pale.
Can you fix it?
Yes, I said. But it's going to be in my incident report. And I'm required to notify the clients about security breaches per our contracts. Richard came running before I could send the notifications. Let's not overreact, he said. It's contained. Trevor made a mistake. He's learning. This isn't a mistake, Richard, I said. This is negligence. If the state health department finds out we had unauthorized cryptocurrency mining on servers that handle patient data, we could lose every certification we have. So don't tell them, Richard said. That's called covering up a breach, I said. That's illegal. I could lose my certifications. I could go to jail. Nobody's going to jail, Richard said, but his voice was shaking. Just clean it up. Document it internally. We'll handle it as a training issue. I looked at Trevor. He looked like he was about to cry. I looked at Richard. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Okay, I said. I'll clean it up. I spent the rest of the day removing the mining software, patching the security holes, and restoring the backup servers to proper function. And then I wrote the most detailed incident report I've ever created. 8 pages. Every mistake. Every security failure. Every violation of policy. I saved it to my encrypted drive. I didn't send it to anyone. Not yet. But I had it ready. The nuclear option. That night, I got a text from Marcus, my lead engineer. The good one who actually knew what he was doing. Marcus, Vicky, I can't do this anymore. Trevor just told me to disable the firewall because it's slowing down his Spotify streaming. I'm updating my resume. I replied immediately. Marcus, don't quit yet. Give me 2 more weeks. What happens in 2 weeks? Everything changes, I said. Trust me. Tuesday morning, the hospital called an emergency meeting. They wanted Richard, Trevor, and me in their conference room at 2 p.m. Non-negotiable. We drove over in Richard's Lexus. Trevor spent the entire drive practicing his pitch about innovation and digital transformation. I said nothing. I just watched the scenery go by. The hospital's risk management team was waiting for us. 5 people in business attire sitting on one side of a long conference table. We sat across from them like students called to the principal's office. Margaret, the head of risk management, got straight to the point. We've been reviewing our contract with Medinet Solutions, she said. We have concerns about the change in technical leadership. Specifically, our contract requires that Victoria Hayes serve as the lead engineer with full operational authority. Can you confirm that's still the case? Richard opened his mouth to lie. I cut him off. No, I said. I was demoted to senior engineer 3 weeks ago. Trevor is now the CTO with full technical authority. Margaret wrote something down. I see. And does Trevor hold the required certifications specified in our contract? Trevor jumped in. I'm currently pursuing those certifications. I'm doing an online course. An online course, Margaret repeated. For healthcare IT security? Yeah, Trevor said. It's really comprehensive. 6 modules. Margaret looked at her colleagues. They looked back. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Mr. Patterson, Margaret said, looking at Richard, our contract specifies that the lead engineer must hold current certifications. Not pursuing. Not planning to obtain. Current. This appears to be a material breach of our service agreement. Now hold on, Richard said. We can fix this. Victoria still has her certifications. We can adjust the org chart. Restore her authority. I spoke up. I'd need that in writing, Richard. I'd need full technical authority, proper compensation, and guarantees that Trevor won't override my decisions. And I'd need to review all the changes that have been made in the past 3 weeks to ensure we're still in compliance. What changes? Margaret asked sharply. I looked at her. Then I looked at Richard. Then I pulled out my printed documentation. All of it. The disabled generator tests. The cryptocurrency incident. The copied disaster recovery plan. The contractor with no background check having admin access. I slid the stack across the table. These changes, I said. Margaret's face went through several colors as she read. Richard looked like he was going to be sick. Trevor was scrolling on his phone, probably Googling how to survive a disaster meeting. When Margaret finished reading, she set the papers down carefully. Mr. Patterson, she said, we'll be invoking the 30-day termination clause in our contract. We're moving our infrastructure to another provider. But we have a relationship, Richard stammered. We've worked together for 8 years. We had a relationship with Victoria Hayes, Margaret corrected. You chose to remove her from her position of authority. That broke our contract. We're simply following the legal process. She turned to me. Victoria, if you're willing, we'd like to contract with you directly for the transition. We need someone who knows our systems to ensure continuity of care. Elena's firm is ready to take over, I said. I've already briefed them on your infrastructure. We can begin the migration immediately. Richard turned to me, his face purple with rage. You planned this. You sabotaged us. I documented your son's incompetence, I corrected. There's a difference. I warned you about every single decision that was made. I recommended against all of them. You ignored me. This isn't sabotage, Richard. This is consequences. We drove back to the office in silence. When we arrived, Richard went straight to his office and slammed the door. Trevor went to his office and started packing his designer hoodies. I went to the operations center. By the end of the day, 2 more clients had called to discuss contract breaches. By the end of the week, all of our major clients had filed termination notices. By the end of the month, Medinet Solutions had lost 90% of its revenue. Richard tried to sue me. He tried to sue Elena. His lawyer took one look at the documentation, the contracts, the evidence of Trevor's decisions, and quietly advised him to settle. The settlement was simple. Richard would provide transition assistance and not interfere with client migrations. In exchange, we wouldn't file countersuits for the hostile work environment and constructive dismissal. Trevor went back to California. Last I heard, he's trying to start another podcast, this one about overcoming adversity in business. It has 8 subscribers. Richard sold the office building and retired for real this time. No crypto consulting. No comeback. He just disappeared into a country club somewhere, probably telling people that his business was destroyed by disloyal employees. And me? I'm the technical director of Elena's firm. We're now the primary healthcare IT provider for the region. We have 15 employees, all of whom are actual technical professionals. We have the contracts that I built over 12 years. We have the clients who trusted me. We have a generator that tests every Saturday morning like clockwork. Last week, I got an email from Richard. Subject line, can we talk? I deleted it without reading past the preview. Some conversations aren't worth having. Some bridges are meant to burn. I'm sitting in our new operations center right now. 6 monitors displaying the systems I've been maintaining for over a decade. All green. All stable. All mine. Well, 40% mine. Elena owns the rest. Fair trade for the business infrastructure and legal protection. My hands still hurt from the arthritis. The years of cable crimping left their mark. But now I can afford the good physical therapy. I can afford to take vacations. I can afford to say no to midnight emergency calls because I have a team I trust to handle them. I'm not rich, but I'm free. And in this industry, freedom is worth more than any title Richard could have given me. There's a photo on my desk. It's from the first major hospital deployment I did 12 years ago. I'm wearing a company polo that doesn't fit right, holding a network cable smiling. I look exhausted and proud.
I was so young then.
I thought loyalty mattered. I thought if you worked hard enough, long enough, people would recognize your value. I learned better. They didn't recognize my value until they lost it. That's the real lesson here. You can be the best at what you do. You can be irreplaceable. But until people actually try to replace you and fail, they'll never know what you are worth. So I made them try. I made them fail. And then I walked away while they were still figuring out what went wrong. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, trapped at a job where you're undervalued, where some boss's kid is about to take over and run your work into the ground, here's my advice. Document everything. Know your contracts. Know your worth. Build your exit strategy before you need it. And when they finally push you too far, don't get mad. Don't yell. Don't storm out. Just smile, nod, and let them hang themselves with the rope they're already holding. Then walk away. Build something better. Something yours. Something they can't take away because this time, your name is on the deed, not just the contract. I'm Victoria Hayes. I'm 48 years old. I have arthritis, 3 professional certifications, and a 40% stake in a company that's going to double its revenue next year. And every Saturday morning at 8 a.m., I smile when I hear our backup generator start its test cycle. It sounds like competence. It sounds like success. It sounds like revenge served cold with full documentation and legal protection. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. Share it with anyone who needs to hear that you don't have to accept being pushed aside. You don't have to watch incompetent people destroy what you built. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic. It's just being better, being smarter, and being ready when they finally realize they needed you more than you needed them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a conference call with a potential new client. They're leaving their current provider because, and I quote, the new management doesn't seem to know what they're doing. I wonder who they're talking about. I guess some people never learn. But I did. And that's why I'm still here, watching the green lights blink, knowing that this time, nobody can flip the switch but me. Stay sharp out there. Document everything. And remember, the best way to prove you're irreplaceable is to let them try to replace you. Just make sure you have somewhere better to go first.